Well, hello there to all our children, parents, and teachers here at Aston Hall. I hope you're getting on and sending our best wishes to everyone. If you're in school or if you've been uh, having your learning at home, I'm sure you're doing a super job and trying your very, very hardest. What I want to do over these next few weeks really is to look at a series of assemblies which are focusing on something quite important that's been in the news quite a lot recently around the different values that we hold as the British kind of area. Including things like our democracy and things like what's happened with Brexit, and even the things that we're hearing in terms of where we are now with the rules that we have to follow in the current restrictions. So I want to just hold a series of assemblies just for you children to be able to just have a few thoughts and also understand a little bit more about what we mean when we talk about Britain values. So just to start off with, I've just put up our Union Jack there, which is a combination of flags which make up our combination of countries. So let's just break that down a little bit and see what we're talking about. So when we're talking about British, what we're talking about is all the people who live in those countries that we can see highlighted in blue. So we've got England, we've got Scotland just at the top, we've got Wales, and then just over we've got Northern Ireland in the north part of Ireland, and it's those particular countries that make up what we call Britain. Okay, so when we're talking about British values, we're talking about all the people involved in making decisions and shaping our society in those countries. So, when we talk about values, well, what does that mean? And you can see that on the screen there, I put lots of words, some of which you may understand, some of which are really, really complicated that even I'm not quite sure about. But they're all words that would describe values, things that are important to us. So I wonder if we can break down exactly what we mean, just to help you guys understand a little bit more about what our country is about. So, what are values? Well, really, the simplest way of thinking about it is that they're ideas that we really believe in, something that we're passionate about, something that we think is going to help and benefit everybody. So, for example, it could be that one of your values is that you think it's really important to be kind to people, and that's a really, really good value. I think a lot of people would agree that that's something important that we try to have in any country or how we're dealing with people, and that's an example of what we mean by a value, something that you think is important to you. In terms of the British values, the government have looked at this, they've looked at how we are as a group of countries, and we've got those five which really stand out, and it's those five that in school we want to try and make sure all of you guys are aware of. So we've got democracy, respect, laws, freedom, and tolerance. And over the coming weeks, we'll be exploring each of those in more detail, so you guys have got a really good knowledge of what we mean, and also get to reflect on what it means for you. Because you might think some of those words are only to do with the grown-ups and the people who make the decisions, but actually, you have got a really important role to play, and I'm hoping you'll get that. So today, we're going to start off with this word here. We've got democracy. And actually, that word is generated from a series of old Greek words. The demo part of it means people. So, demo is a Greek root word meaning people, and the crisy is also about rule. So you put those two Greek root words together, or parts of words together, democracy, and you can kind of see that it means that people rule, or the people have a way of supporting the rule of the country. And that's quite an important distinction, because that's different from if you're in a country where one person makes all the rules and makes all the decisions. So if we're in a democracy, like we are in Britain, how do we then choose our rulers? How do we go about making decisions that involve everybody? Well, I've put on a few things there that may be familiar to some of you, and for some of you might not know. So what happened is we have what we call an election. So the people who are able to vote, who have to vote, and some of it's when you have to be old enough to do that, will basically elect people, MPs, through a ballot box to be able to choose who they want to speak for them. So during these times, we have polling stations where adults, mums and dads, family members, you may remember some of the older children, can go and actually select from a series of people who they think would be the best person to represent them in their local area. Actually, our school is a polling station, and that's why sometimes in May we do have to have a day where we have to close school because there's members of the public coming in to make their vote, and they vote by marking a sheet of paper with the candidate, the people they want to choose to speak for them, and then it goes in one of these black ballot boxes. And just down here you can see where what the paper sort of looks like. You've got different choices, so that's a slightly older ballot paper, not a recent one, but you can kind of see them. Basically you put a big X with who you want to choose, so you can see how it's an example of the people choosing some of the people who speak for them, and all those results then go to decide who ultimately rules the government in Downing Street, which is part of where the government officers are and the Prime Minister works, who is the person in charge of the party who we pick. So, a bit of a question for you. I wonder if anyone knows how often do you think there's an election in the UK? It can change, and sometimes extreme circumstances can force this to become earlier or later, but I'm just interested to know, what is the normal time that you think we get to have an election? Have you had a think? Let's find out. Was it 4? Was it 5? Was it 6 years? Well, normally it's every 5 years. Now that's really interesting, because that means that, say you started school in foundation stage, even by the time you're in year 4, it's going to be the same people in charge of the country. That's been quite a long time for you in school under the same people. But it's also fair because it allows the people of the country to look again at who is ruling and who's in charge to see if they want to make a change. I've just put a few pictures up there of some of further pictures, if you like, of how we rule. So you've got the Houses of Parliament in London. That's a place where all the MPs, the people who we've chosen from those polling cards to represent us, they all meet and carry out their work and debates. And you can see just underneath just how busy it gets. It doesn't look like that at the moment because the House of Parliament are social distancing. They're all wearing masks just in the same way that we're all trying to be safe. But if it was a normal sort of working week, it can get as busy as that. And there'll be somebody there from every area of the country which is represented by polling. So somewhere in that picture possibly might be the person who represents us in our local area at that particular time. And I've also just put the Houses of Parliament symbol, which is often used when we get letters or we get guidance from them. And what these guys do is basically make decisions about a really, really large range of things, right from our hospitals. They're making big decisions about those at the moment. You may be aware from some of the information on the news. They make decisions on things like the police force, making sure that they're keeping us safe, fire, make sure that we've got protective measures there. I'm sure you can probably guess some of the other things that they help us with. Our armed services, our armed forces, to keep us safe both at home and overseas. Our roads, making sure that they're all repaired, making sure they're all efficient, and building new roads if we need to, other transport. Our ambulances, making sure that all works in conjunction with our hospitals. Schools, let's not forget that. They're a big part of supporting schools. Our parks and other leisure areas, and some of our gyms as well. So you can see how some of the decisions that the people make really, really must impact all of us and all of you, because a lot of these services are important to all of us. It's worth remembering that actually at the moment, once you reach the right age to vote, most people in the country can vote. Remember, it's a democracy, the people rule, but it wasn't always like that. It wasn't really too long ago that actually it was considered that women, any women, weren't able to vote because the men of the time just thought women couldn't understand what was going on. That sounds amazing now, but actually that's what happened. So you can clearly see that things have changed, and obviously now women are able to vote, but it took a long time, it took a lot of hard work, and that's really where we are. And you can just see some of the work that they had to do, and often they protested, they went to places where they wanted to show that they were the same. They held up placards with votes for women and went on marches, and it was really, really important they did this work because it enabled it to be much more equal, and people were able to then vote the same. And I'm sure that if you ask your mums and dads and family members, if you thought about your friends at school, there's absolutely no way that it would be fair if only the boys could vote and not the girls. But that didn't happen until relatively recently. And even now, in other areas of the world, there are still places where it's still unfair and only certain people can vote. And that's one of the reasons why, in our country, or in our area, Britain, we are considered to be a democracy that people do look at and do appreciate because we have tried to be as fair as possible. So a lot of other countries do model themselves on wanting to be as fair as we are. So, just something for you to think about at the end of the assembly. Think about all those things I've said. Can you think of how we could be a democracy in school? Have there been times where we've been able to decide together on the things we want? We have had a school council where we have looked and thought about the things that we want, and the school councils are normally elected in class. So you can see how we've got a few things like that. But think about those other services that I mentioned. How do they help you in school and after school? And then we'll leave it there, and I'll see you next week for the next part of our British values. Thank you all for listening. Again, best wishes, and we'll see you all soon.